Welcome back to Lessons from the Frontline, a series on energy access innovation sponsored by Energy Catalyst, an Innovate UK program, and ESI Africa. We're joined for this episode by Gavriel Landau, a co-founder of Charm Impact. London-based Charm Impact is the only crowdsourcing platform to focus exclusively on the earliest stage of the energy access market in emerging economies, including Africa. It recently raised nearly £300,000 in equity for corporate growth and has a goal of deploying tens of millions of pounds in debt by 2025. So let's jump right in, Gav. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
So the first question is pretty obvious. There are plenty of crowdsourcing platforms out there already, Lend a Hand, Trine. Why did you decide that we needed one more, and what's the gap that Charm Impact is filling?
Yeah, a really great question to start with, so thanks. I guess the first part is really to look at the types of borrowers that we engage with compared to our competitors and what that does for the market as a whole. So we typically start at the real earliest stage of the market, and now nascent market, early stage is generally flung around quite regularly. And so when we define earliest stage, it's really the company is post MVP, they have a commercially viable, commercially ready business model. They have action in the field that we can see, touch, meet their customers, understand and meet the team, and see they've got a good, strong grasp of their unit economics. At that point, we're able to then deploy risk-tolerant capital that enables those companies to start on the journey to scale. Another part of this is that we really see a big kind of crunch in the industry at the moment where all of the kind of later stage funders, albeit still early stage companies that they're funding, but later stage funders compared to where we play, they are typically funding the same companies. And we're seeing kind of the same handful of companies year on year getting more and more capital. And that's not a problem necessarily, but we do need to see a lot more companies coming through the pipeline if we have any hope of achieving SDG 7 by 2030, which seems a long way off, but really isn't very far. And so what we see ourselves in the kind of the positioning we're creating, and actually we work with a couple of the other crowdfunding platforms on a referral basis, is as that pipeline builder. So we provide that first stage of commercial capital. We help the companies take on a series of loans to build up a credit history and a credit score so that by the time they're ready to graduate from Charm and kind of fly the nest, if we can use such a term right now, that helps them to go, and they're much more investable propositions for the rest of the market.
So I think a couple of things also that I just wanted to pull out there. I think you're focused also exclusively on indigenous or local companies, right? And I think we saw earlier, I think it was last year, a data point I saw, which was essentially 75%, 3/4 of the money that's going into this off-grid solar space went to 3 companies, right? So there's also a growing call for more capital available for local companies. They know their consumer better, they're in the community to begin with, they're often better set up to succeed. Is that also correct, that you're really trying to focus on that part of the market as well?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly our investment thesis. Our kind of internal indicator is that at least 85% of the portfolio at all times should be to locally owned and managed companies. An important aspect to pull out, what do we define as local? I think it's something that the industry doesn't have an agreed upon definition. We define it as at least one of the co-founding team, as multiple founders, is a native of the country of operations or of the original operations, even if they expand beyond that. And right now we are 100% locally funded on the companies we've supported. And so we're exceeding our target, and we see it as a real differentiator, but actually we see it as a real benefit for the industry as a whole. And being able to give a lot of the local companies that access to the global market, I think, is a huge value add and opportunity, and something we've really missed at the moment within the industry.
So perhaps you could just give us a quick example, if possible. Well, first of all, how many projects do you have in the market today? And what do you expect?
Really good question. So we've got 8 projects live right now. Of those 8, 1 has completed its full loan cycle, and we have a 9th that is currently fundraising on our platform. So we're still in our early stage.
Which countries are those in, Gav?
They are across India, Nigeria, and Kenya. And one of the companies is a manufacturer. And so they sold their products, won the projects into Liberia and Papua New Guinea. They were kind of a edge case for us.
I see. And then, I know that they're within that cohort of lendees. You've got a couple of interesting examples. I think you mentioned Winnock in Nigeria. Can you tell us a little bit more how maybe that illustrates exactly what you're talking about in terms of taking a company at the very beginning of its growth and helping to accelerate it to, into a different stage?
Yeah, perfect example. So thanks for bringing them up. I guess, so Winnock, we met Sanmi, Akinsanmi Lajuomi, who's the founder of Winnock, originally at an event in London, actually. And we then really liked his business model. So at the time, to show his scale, well, actually, let me rewind. What they do, it's they sell solar systems to market stall owners, primarily in Abuja, Nigeria for now, and will expand across the region as they grow. They saw a real gap in the market and a really great business, quite similar to RenSource's original business when we compare the two. And RenSource obviously much better known for now. But what they do is they found that there's a lot of diesel generators and productive uses of energy, but there's a really high concentration of those productive use as the markets. So when we say market stall owners, these are things like barbers, mobile phone charging shops, tailors, convenience stores, as well as just kind of people want to be comfortable when they sell their stuff. So power for fans and lighting in your shop when you're spending, 12 to 16 hours a day in that shop. It's kind of an important aspect and helps you have more clientele come and visit your store. So it's a really great business model in as much as you have a high density of good customers who are using their energy for productive services. On top of that, they're already spending a lot of money on diesel fuel to run their businesses, and they're just displacing that diesel directly with solar. So it's a really nice business model. And I think the unit economics are really solid. So we met Sanmi when he had deployed 88 units in his pilot market within Abuja. He had funded that by releasing equity and selling it to a private investor to actually fund that initial starting point of the company. They were our second project, so we were still pretty early in our kind of growth journey, and so we provided them a loan of £7,850. This enabled them to buy another 10 units to add, but more importantly, it was their first time taking on commercial debt, and that's a really big differentiator for an early stage company to start building up that credit history that otherwise is almost impossible to get. So kind of fast forward, where did that take Sanmi and the team? So they've expanded their team significantly. They've fully repaid that loan. They survived the COVID pandemic through that. And actually what we did, it was quite interesting. We gave the customers and them a 3-month pause on the loan. So not accruing additional interest because everyone left, right? The market was completely closed. And so we had a choice as a company, which was really interesting. It was, do we maintain that debt burden on a company? And do we actually keep accruing interest even if we pause repayments? Or do we just look at our investment thesis, look at our kind of moral leadership and say, actually, no, let's just pause the loan entirely, pause the loan that they have with their customers who are paying to own their systems, and it works well for everyone. So they've finished repaying that first loan. We've just funded them a second loan at around 65K, so quite a significant increase on their first. They then also have received a loan from Nithio in their growth journey. Recently announced they also have received an equity investment from Acumen to help them on their journey to scale. So it's a really great example of where we're seeing a local entrepreneur get access to the international market in a really meaningful way, and seeing how they understand their local market conditions, how that slow building of a credit score positions them really in a fantastic way to compete on that global stage.
Great. So Gav, I think, so that's a great example of, showing the opportunity to really try and find these early stage local entrepreneurs, clearly good business people, but a lack of access to operating capital. Mm-hmm. And so that's a good example. I know that there's also, however, besides sort of the focus on local entrepreneurs, there's also a focus on trying to maintain a gender lens. I think that's right. What you guys refer to, or just trying to engage women more or benefit women more from the work that you're doing. Can you explain that a little bit as well?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that we are quite passionate about internally, and working out how we hold ourselves to certain standards in terms of our own gender diversity within the company, and how we need to apply that lens when making the investments we do. So we typically are looking for companies where we can, and this is maybe a slightly lower threshold right now than our local threshold, but will increasingly become more prevalent, where they have either a woman that is empowered within the organization, either as a founder or in a senior management positions, and or their operations directly are targeting on benefiting women, either in the services they provide or the agents they employ. And so we have a really good example of that in a company with a loan we recently went live with. It's a company called Cilibrium Solar. They're a local company in Kenya, and they have a real focus on supporting the harder to reach counties within Kenya. So it's quite a saturated market, but I think they've really carved out a niche, focusing on taking their local knowledge and actually applying it within that setting to say, right, these are the harder to reach counties within kind of the western and eastern parts of Kenya. And this is where we're going to really hone in on our kind of niche. They are led, although not owned, by a lady called Gilfine. She's an amazing leader, and so she runs the company for them. And then they have a specific focus. They've actually seen that their female agents are much more successful within the markets they operate. They know the women within their local communities, and they hire people from the local communities to help sell their solar home systems. And so it's a really shining example of where we're seeing that kind of balance, where there's female leadership within the company, as well as empowerment within the work they do. And we're looking to do a lot more work like that.
In terms of region then, so you're in Nigeria, Kenya. Can you talk a little bit about where you're looking for the next wave of opportunity for this segment of the market?
Sure. It's interesting as a question because we have a broad stated focus, which is Sub-Saharan Africa, South and Southeast Asia. Really, we're seeing South and Southeast Asia as our stretch markets at the moment in practicality. And we're trying not to have such a focus on saying only in West Africa or only in East Africa, for example, because we're seeing the opportunity in quite a number of places. And actually, we see our role as taking on that earlier stage capital as a bit of a market maker. And so we should be able to look at markets that other people are not necessarily looking into yet. So for this year, we're trying to take a slightly broader spectrum, really focusing on Sub-Saharan Africa, which is a very big place, obviously, and seeing where the opportunity comes. Where do we see some really great entrepreneurs coming through our pipeline that we want to support, rather than ruling them out based on their geographical focus? We have a slight challenge of being able to obviously meet companies in person right now. And so we have an agent network and supporters we're building up within the wider community who can help us do the in-person due diligence where we're unable to travel to. However, that's something we're overcoming kind of internally. But so we're really looking across the market. We're seeing great opportunity coming through in Tanzania, Zambia, Sierra Leone, and a few other different countries, as well as more opportunity within Kenya and Nigeria. So those are kind of our next steps, but we're very open across the market to seeing where can we deploy our capital, because the problem is very real that we're trying to solve in terms of that lack of access to commercial debt for earlier stage companies. So really keeping that open market lens.
So if a company wants to find more about Charm Impact, where do they do that?
Yeah, great question. So from the borrower side, let's say, go to our website. There's a specific section on the borrowers. There's a questionnaire to fill out, and then someone from the team will get in touch to kind of follow up and see if it's a good fit for us and the company. From the investor side, you can either go to our website or any of our socials. We're in kind of all the usual places, and kind of stay in touch with the company. We offer, a good service all round, and we really look after the ecosystem of both donors providing that philanthropic capital, the investors providing the investment capital, and for our borrowers who are looking for reasonably priced debt that they can actually use to scale their companies.
And what's the website address?
It's www.charmimpact.com.
Easy enough. Great. Well, thanks, Gavin. For those who also want to learn more about Energy Catalyst, you can do that at energycatalyst.ukri.org. Gav, thanks so much for joining us, and it'll be exciting to see your progress over the next 5 years.
Yeah, great. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.